Hi everyone, Sammy Flair here. Welcome back to Bolt Action, the series where, because I decided to film late this week, we get to revel in the longest win streak of the season up to this point, as well as the longest point streak of the season up to this point. The latter of those two is still going on. A quick programming note before we get started on today's video. My job takes me on the road a lot, and that makes filming on a regular schedule much more difficult than it has been in recent memory. All of that to say, I know this week's episode is late. I'm about to embark on another business trip that's going to encompass about 7 days of my time, so the next episode will be late as well. We're just going to kind of freeform this until the end of the season, but hoping to have regular installments for the postseason because the Lightning are like right on the cusp of getting there. And I realize I may be jumping ahead a little bit here considering that no team has clinched a playoff berth yet. However, Data Driven Hockey and MoneyPuck.com and basically everybody out there has the Lightning in the 99th percentile chance of making the postseason, even if just as a wild card. So even though the deed isn't done yet, I feel pretty confident about where they are. We're going to talk playoff speculation at the end of this video, but let's focus on what has happened since I saw you last. The most recent game we talked about was the 7-0 rout of the Philadelphia Flyers at home. Since then, the Lightning went on a 4-game winning streak consisting of the New York Rangers at home, then the Florida Panthers, the Vegas Golden Knights, the San Jose Sharks, all on the road before dropping a game in overtime to the LA Kings, thus continuing their point streak and winning in overtime against the Anaheim Ducks. This means that all told, since I last made a video for this series, the Lightning have won 6 of their last 7. They have a 7-game point streak that is still active, and dating back to their last 10, they are 7-1-2, basically meaning they're getting hot at the right time. And while this is phenomenal news, because believe me, I am much more excited about this than I am letting on in this very moment, because during basically every single one of those wins, and hell, even the loss to the Los Angeles Kings, I was pretty much jumping up and down with joy over the quality of opponents that they were defeating, you know, minus San Jose and Anaheim. So let's first check in with the trade deadline acquisitions of Anthony Duclair and Matt Dumba and see how they're doing. Suffice it to say, I think they're fitting in really well. Starting with Anthony Duclair, and he just fits like exactly. In 7 games since coming over from the San Jose Sharks, Anthony Duclair has posted a point in all 7 of those games, including 5 goals. He's currently sitting at 5 goals, 4 assists for 9 points through 7 games. He has had no problems whatsoever adjusting to this Tampa Bay Lightning forward group, to the team philosophy, to anything. He looks like he should have been here at the beginning of the season. 9 points through 7 games from a trade deadline acquisition. Could you really ask for much better than that? Well, yes, I suppose you could ask for Connor McDavid in the trade deadline. Matt Dumba has not been nearly as productive on the score sheet as Anthony Duclair, but we also very much expected that. No goals, no assists, no points through his first 7 games. He is breaking even on the plus minus, but he's showing up in categories that matter. He's averaging 20 minutes and 36 seconds on the ice every single night. That's exactly the kind of thing that you want. The only defensemen that are outdoing him are Victor Hedman and the injured Mikhail Sergachev, so slotting in nicely there. But importantly, he is laying hits. He's laying a lot of hits. He's laying a lot of heavy hits. Through his first 7 games, he has 21 hits, so averaging 3 per game. That is actually the most per game of any Tampa Bay Lightning defenseman. So is that rate going to keep up? Highly unlikely, but for right now, he's getting in and he's getting physical, and that's what we wanted to see more of from this defense. So at the end of the day, you got what you wanted to out of your trade deadline acquisitions. They made a positive impact. They made an immediate positive impact, and they have thrived so far. They've won basically all the games that they've played, minus the game against the Kings. Number 2, the Lightning seem to have simplified their game, particularly after adding Anthony Duclair and Matt Dumba, and that is paying dividends right now, but not in necessarily all the ways that you would expect. This team in 2023 and 2024 has thrived on speed, on high danger chances, on scoring a lot of goals, and in particular, scoring a lot of goals on the power play. This team is lethal on the power play. They have been for quite some time, especially with the score of Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, and Hedman. Currently, they are still first in the league at 29%. There's part of me that thinks that they could theoretically break the Edmonton Oilers all-time power play percentage record, which I think was 32.4%. So it's possible, but I feel like they're still going to finish number one in the league on the power play this year. But while this team has thrived on those offensive capabilities, they have suffered in the defensive zone, and I have talked about that ad nauseum throughout the entirety of the season, and it's not been made any better by the fact that their goaltending has been, let's face it, subpar. Part of it is, of course, a lack of depth on the blue line, and inexperience on the blue line leads to more dangerous chances for the opposing team, and so you can't totally put the blame on Vasilevsky and Jonas Johansson and Matt Tompkins and everybody else who has played goalie for the Lightning this season, but the goalies do share some of the blame for what has happened thus far. And look, I've said it on here before. May I remind you that I am the goalie apologist, so to speak. That I know that goals against average specifically, but also save percentage, are not necessarily indicative of how the goalie is playing, but rather how the team defense is actually playing. So I don't know exactly how much of the struggles to ascribe to Andrei Vasilevsky himself, or how much to ascribe to the team defense, the lack of depth, the so on and so forth. But what I will say is during the 6 games that he played during this 7-game point streak that we are currently discussing, in 3 of those games, his save percentage was under 900, and in the other 3 of those games, his save percentage was over 940, including 1 shutout. It makes it a little difficult to figure out exactly what the hell is going on. But with the simplified game plan and the simplified execution of that game plan, it seems like the Lightning are getting much more of a grasp on what their identity is right now and how they can continue on this path of success as they approach the final 11 games of this season. And it's a blessing and a curse because they are still continuing to thrive in what they're good at, great on speed, great on high danger chances, great on goals, great on power play goals, but they are managing to clamp down on the things that they're not so good at, but it is pulling resources away a little bit from the things that they are good at, if that makes sense. Let me just tell you what I mean, because that's ultimately going to be the third point that I get to. The Lightning this season have hung their goalies out to dry more often than not. And again, it's not just defensemen. The forwards share some responsibility there. Sometimes it's poor decision making. Sometimes it's turnover. Sometimes it's bad puck luck. But it is what it is. It has continued to happen throughout this season. So simplifying the game plan means clamping back down in the defensive zone and not being as risky with attempting to get the puck out. It's more of get in front of the puck, get in front of the shot. Don't do it while screening Andrei Vasilevsky or Jonas Johansson, but do everything you can to lend a hand to your goalie. And while it has largely been effective, it hasn't moved the needle that much. There are still improvements that can be made. But what you end up sacrificing in order to achieve this kind of clamping down and being more conservative in your defensive zone is you're going to take a lot less shots because you are all of a sudden not focusing on the transition game and trying to get on the odd man rushes the other way and the breakaways and the fast zone entries. You are sacrificing more of your offensive zone time and more of your offensive zone shots in an effort to not let your goalie get shot on that much. And with that fresh in our minds, here's my primary concern for right now. The Lightning are not putting on a ton of shots, relatively speaking. During this 7-game point streak, and may I remind you that they won 6 of those games, they've been outshot 4 times. Vegas, San Jose, Anaheim, and whatever that was against the Florida Panthers, where they were outshot 50-16 and somehow still won the game 5-3. And yes, you better believe that during that game I had some very unkind words for my television, watching the Lightning only amass 5 shots on goal in the final 2 periods. But hey, a win is a win, and let's just pray that we don't have to play Florida in the first round. The other 3 games during that point streak, they tied the New York Rangers for shots on goal. They outshot the Philadelphia Flyers by 1 in a game where they won 7-0, and they outshot the LA Kings by 1 in a game where they lost 4-3 in overtime. All told, during these 7 games, they've been getting outshot by an average of 6 shots every single game. They've been averaging 23 shots on goal for themselves per game, which is particularly impressive when you consider the fact that they have scored 33 goals in those 7 games, giving them, let's do some quick math, 4.7 goals per game on 23 shots. And another bit of quick math that I'm totally doing in my head right now, I didn't write down right there, that gives a shooting percentage of roughly 20%. And just to give you an idea of how ridiculous that is, the best team shooting percentage in the NHL this season is the Vancouver Canucks at 12.4%, just ahead of, you guessed it, the Tampa Bay Lightning at 12.09%. So in this 7-game stretch, they are shooting 8% more efficiently than they have all season long. It shows that they can score a lot of goals despite not having a high volume of shots on goal on any given night of the week. It shows that they can be competitive and they can outscore some of their problems. It gives you a lot of confidence going into this last stretch of the season and into the postseason. But on the other side of that, as you're trying to simplify and clamp down on defense and make things better for your goalies, honestly, one of the best ways that you can do that is controlling time of possession and spending time outside of your defensive zone. And while it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to put more shots on goal if you're controlling time of possession, because, you know, other teams get to play defense and block shots, and you are a team that likes to cycle the puck and look for prime opportunities to shoot, it does mean that you are spending less time in your defensive zone. It means you are giving the other team fewer opportunities to score and fewer opportunities to shoot the puck. So going into the final 11 games, I think that's the thing that I want to see the Lightning make strides towards improving. We already know that they can score. The defense has gotten better. The goaltending has technically gotten better, but I want to see that they can control more of the ice. I want to see that they can control more of the puck for more of the time and limit chances on defense. If you are going into a series against, I don't know, the Florida Panthers, that you don't get outshot 50-16 every single night. Because you can only do that so many times to a team like the Florida Panthers before they wise up to it and decide they are going to break your face. And that gives us a nice segue into talking about the potential playoff matchups for the Lightning. As of tonight, it is March 25th as I am recording this. The Lightning are still in the #1 wildcard spot, meaning they would play the Florida Panthers in the first round. I kind of scratch my head right now and wonder who the best matchup would be for the Lightning in round 1. And honestly, my gut tells me that it would be Boston, but it's by the slimmest of margins. Now, there is another possibility for the Lightning here. Just stick with me for a moment. The Lightning are currently in a position to leapfrog the Toronto Maple Leafs and take the 3rd seed in the Atlantic rather than settling for a wild card spot. At this point during the last video, that would have been unthinkable because the Toronto Maple Leafs had a 6-point lead on the Lightning with 2 games in hand, so you had to count on the fact that if they won both of those games, you would effectively have a 10-point lead. But as of right now, the Lightning are 4 points behind the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs only have 1 game in hand, so effectively you count on them being 6 points ahead, and you play the Maple Leafs 2 more times before the end of the season. So if you win both of those games, the first one is coming up next week. It's April 3rd in Toronto. The second one is the last game of the season. It's April 14th in Tampa Bay. You win both of those games, you have now closed the gap, and you are effectively only behind by 2 points. And comparing these teams' schedule down the stretch here, the Tampa Bay Lightning in their final 11 games have 3 games against teams that are virtually guaranteed to make the playoffs, 1 against Boston, 2 against Toronto, and then a handful of games against teams that are fighting for playoff position right now. The New York Islanders at home, the Detroit Red Wings at home, both those teams are kind of reeling right now. The Washington Capitals on the road, and an outside shot for the Buffalo Sabres at home in the second to last game of the season. So 7 of their last 11. This is the Maple Leaf schedule the rest of the way. Ready? At home against New Jersey, at home against Washington, in Buffalo, at home against Florida, at home against Tampa, in Montreal, at home against Pittsburgh, in New Jersey, at home against New Jersey, at home against Detroit, at Florida, at Tampa. Washington, Buffalo, Detroit, and New Jersey 3 times. That is 6 games against teams that are desperately fighting for the opportunity to make the playoffs. The Maple Leafs, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they get a little bit complacent. They drop a few games and the Tampa Bay Lightning leapfrog them. That doesn't necessarily do the Lightning any favors in this case, because instead of being in a wild card and having a potential 4 teams that you might play against in Carolina, New York, Boston, and Florida, you are limiting yourself to 2 potential opponents in Boston and Florida. Make no mistake, going through the Eastern Conference in this year's playoffs is going to be brutal. It is going to be a slog. It's going to be physical. It's overall just gonna be not fun, because if you are a wild card team, as the Tampa Bay Lightning currently are, and you are looking at the potential of playing one of 4 opponents in the first round, guess who you get in the second round? One of the others, most likely. By my calculation, if the Lightning are going to make the Stanley Cup, they are going to have to beat 3 of those 4 teams in Boston, Florida, New York, and Carolina. And they're going to have to do all of that with no home ice advantage. The real key at this point is just to keep winning games, get yourself in the playoffs. It is incredibly unlikely that you are going to have home ice advantage for any part of these playoffs if you make them. So focus on the task at hand. And the task at hand is win and get into the playoffs. The task at hand after that is focus on the opponent that you have to play and steal games on the road whenever you can. Before we finish up, a quick little mention of the Art Ross Trophy race for the most points at the end of the regular season. It is currently a 3-horse race. At 11 games to go, Nikita Kucherov is currently in first with 123 points. Also 11 games to go is Nathan MacKinnon with 122 points. And at 117 points is Connor McDavid with 13 games to go. Those extra 2 games may come into play here as Connor McDavid's making a late season push. Most likely the Hart Trophy is going to be won by one of those 3 guys as well, with the potential of Auston Matthews making his way into that conversation, but we're going to cover that in another video a little bit further on down the road. As far as next video is concerned, I have no idea how many games I'll cover in that video. As I already mentioned, I will be on the road for work until April the 3rd, meaning there's no video coming out next week. That is a certainty. As far as after that, I'm going to do my best to fit as many games into the next video whenever I can. It will most likely be over the first weekend in April, like the 5th, 6th, 7th, but I'm doing my very best to be complete in all of this. I promise I will have videos out for the rest of the way. That's it. That's all I've got. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you for giving me just a little bit of your time. I hope that you are as excited and ready for this final stretch of the regular season as I am. But until I see you again, remember, go Bolts, and just get in. You're so close. Just get in. That's what she said!